Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of The Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it is the University of Utah college football preview for the upcoming 2026 season. So that is what we have on tap today. I know there's a couple more things to talk about around the state of Utah, but that will just have to wait until after next week, because next week it's Utah State. So just keep all of that, just keep that pinned on your corkboard or written up in the corner of your notebook. All of the stuff that's been going on around the state of Utah as far as sports are concerned, they will be addressed soon, I promise. But right now, it is the week for the University of Utah. Last week, if you missed it, it was BYU preview. I have the Cougars going 12-1, maybe even 11-2, and hitting the college football playoff, but with a bombshell coming at the end of the season. What's that bombshell? You have to listen to last week's episode to find out. Ooh, teaser. So thank you all so much for being here. As always, please follow me on those socials. That is the Matt Cave Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, the Matt Cave Pod on YouTube. And you can also email me at themattcavepod@gmail.com if you want to get in touch with me. And that about covers everything, I think. And if you haven't already, please do check out Utah Mammoth Daily over on the YouTube channel. Called Utah Mammoth Daily if you'd like daily Utah Mammoth content. All right, so let's dive into things with the University of Utah, and let's talk about last season first. Last season was a success any way you slice it. Utah's two losses came against the two teams that went to the Big 12 championship, and one of them went to the college football playoff. BYU and Utah, or BYU and Texas Tech, rather. So, successful season. Honestly, 11-2, they destroyed Nebraska in the bowl game, 44-22. It wasn't close. Granted, Nebraska, half their team transferred. But Utah's, a lot of their guys played. Only a couple of their guys didn't, and those were the ones that were going pro. Everybody else pretty much played for Morgan Scalley. They went out there, and they got the big win over a Big Ten team that Utah has had troubles with Big Ten teams in bowl games in the past. They lost in the Rose Bowl back-to-back seasons to Ohio State and Penn State, respectively. And then they lost in the Las Vegas Bowl in 2023 to Northwestern. So, progress across the board. They brought in Devin Dampier, who I said it would all depend on how he threw the football. If he was able to take care of the ball, not throw as many interceptions as he did at New Mexico, then Utah could have had a really special season. And turns out, they did. Devin Dampier only threw, 5 interceptions all last season, which was way down from his total at New Mexico, which I believe was 14 or 15. And he didn't really fumble the ball either. So he kept care of the rock, and the team was the number 2 rushing offense in the country at 266 yards per game. They were number 2 in the country. And that's usually reserved for the service academies, right? Navy, Army, Air Force. Those are usually the ones at the top. So fantastic year, only 18 points against, which was tied 17th in the country. 43.6 points for 6th in the nation. I mean, come on. Successful year. Yes, they did fall short in the Holy War, but it was at LaVell Edwards Stadium. I mean, just ask Kansas State how that went when they played at LaVell Edwards tonight. I mean, LaVell Edwards is a different beast. And then their loss against Texas Tech was unfortunate, but it was almost, dare I say, I don't want to say karma, but it kind of was. With the healing BYU fan inside of me, going back to the backup quarterback stuff that Utah had against BYU, Brett Ratliff comes to mind. It was karmic justice for me because they lost to Will Hammond, the backup quarterback of Texas Tech. So for me, it was kind of cathartic. But looking at the roster and staff changes, I mean, well, first let's go back over the schedule that they played last season versus this season. So last season, it wasn't a difficult non-conference schedule, and I'm not knocking Utah for doing that. I think that's the smart way to do it once you're in the Power 4. Once you're in the Power 4, I don't care who you schedule in your non-conference. That doesn't matter. You want to get healthy going into conference play. You want to get everything right, work out the kinks, iron out any wrinkles, and be ready for that first game against your conference opponents. So last season for Utah is UCLA, Cal Poly, and Wyoming. They blew them out by a combined score of, let me do some quick math here, 100 and what is that? 37-25. So that's a pretty good opening 3 games. And then they lost to Texas Tech 34-10. But after that, I mean, they blew out everybody that they won against, and they only lost to BYU by 3. So the majority of the team does return. But, and it's a big but, that's why I said it so loudly there, they lost a lot too. So let's go over that now. And staff changes, roster turnover, all of that. So they lost their entire offensive line last season. 3 of those guys are currently in the NFL. Their center, and then the 2 first-round draft picks. So Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu both went in the first round of the NFL draft. They're expected to start for the Browns and the Patriots, respectively. And the center was signed as an undrafted free agent as well. So that's huge. The entire offensive line has changed. And not only the entire offensive line, but the offensive line coach is gone as well. The good news is that Morgan Scalley was able to hire Jordan Gross, one of the all-time greats from the University of Utah, to coach the offensive line. The only caveat I have there is he hasn't really coached the offensive line at a big-time program like Utah. So it might be bump and go early on in the season with the offensive line. And the offensive line, it's not necessarily young. You've got 3 seniors that are leading the charge as far as like preseason depth charts are concerned. 1 junior and just the 1 freshman, Kelvin Oben. So that is the encouraging part of things, is these guys have seen action in the past. They did come into games last season when they were blowouts, so they have snaps. They're not coming in green and not ready to roll. So that's why I'm not terribly too concerned with the offensive line, but that is something to keep your eyes on. More turnover followed Kyle Whittingham as well. The offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, followed Kyle Whittingham to Michigan, along with Freddie Whittingham, the tight ends coach. And so there's a maelstrom going on the offensive line, or on the offense rather, for the University of Utah. And so what helps with that is having your two studs in the backfield back. Devin Dampier and Wayshawn Parker are both back and ready to roll. So they didn't lose them to the transfer portal, which for a little bit there was touch and go, especially with Wayshawn Parker. But they didn't lose out there. On the defensive side of things, they lost the entire defensive line as well. Logan Fano followed his brother Spencer to the NFL. I thought that was a year too soon. Luther Ellis is gone. John Henry Daly is gone. So the 2 lines are where I'm going to be watching very carefully in the preseason games for the University of Utah. Luckily for Utah, it's Idaho, former FBS school that elected to go back down to the FCS. They come home, or they stay home rather, to face off against the worst team in the SEC, Arkansas, and then they stay home to face off against Utah State in the Battle of the Brothers. So nothing terribly too daunting to start the season. 3 warm-up games, potentially 4 warm-up games, because right after Utah State, they travel to Ames, Iowa to face Iowa State, who knows what's going to go on there now that Matt Campbell has moved on to Penn State. So potentially 4, even 6 warm-up games. I mean, if you go down this schedule, they don't have a real challenge until October 24th at home against Houston, and that's homecoming. So that's the kind of schedule the University of Utah has. It's Idaho, Arkansas, Utah State, at Iowa State, Kansas, at Colorado, and then at home against Houston. And then they travel to Cincinnati, who knows how they're going to be without their, I was going to say something, but without their quarterback who transferred and had that whole offseason saga. No words. And then their next test is against BYU at home on November 14th. So they have a stretch at the beginning of November, basically throughout November, where that is the test for them, other than that game at home against Houston. So November 7th, at home against BYU in the Holy War, at Arizona, November 14th, at TCU, November 21st, and then they wrap up the season at home against West Virginia, the day after Thanksgiving. So this schedule is incredibly manageable. So as you can see, I'm not terribly worried about this season for the University of Utah. If there were a year for a head coaching transition, this would be it. because you're not playing against Texas Tech until maybe the Big 12 championship, maybe. You're not playing against anybody in the non-conference schedule. And the teams you have on your conference schedule are in flux for the most part. Iowa State in flux, brand new coach, brand new regime after almost a decade. Kansas is now trying to figure out what to do without their quarterback, Jalen Daniels, and their quarterback, or their running back from the year prior. And so who knows how Kansas is going to be? Are they going to slide back into being just a basketball school and going 2-10 every year? Who knows? Then at Colorado, who, honestly, this is a make or break year for Coach Prime. I feel like if he can't get this team to 9 wins or 8 wins, they might move on from him. So the Buffaloes might have a little bit of extra juice in them, but I just don't think they have the talent to pull anything off against a team like Utah. Houston is a real worry for both BYU and Utah. So Houston has Connor Wegman at quarterback. He's been there for 2 years. Willie Fritz is a very good head coach. Their defense is only improving, so that is a big test at home. But they don't have that test until halfway through their schedule. So they are probably going to be bowl eligible before they hit their first real test. That's how I feel about this schedule for Utah. And then they have another warm-up game before BYU heading to Cincinnati. That's pretty much how much I've written off the Bearcats. So this schedule it sets up very nicely for Utah. You know, if health remains a good thing for the Utes, it's all warm-up games until Houston, and then the gauntlet, if you can even call it that, of November for the Utes. So that's how I see their schedule. Now, talking about their position groups, obviously quarterback, it's Devin Dampier, Bert Ficklin. I mean, that's an unfair quarterback room to have, in all honesty, especially with how they can run the offense. And just, there's no drop-off, really, when one of them goes in for a play and the other one is the quarterback and the other one's not. And so I am not worried about the quarterback room at all. Even if Devin Dampier has to miss a game or two or half a game, Bert Ficklin is more than capable of filling in for him. And vice versa, Devin Dampier could probably carry the load if Bert Ficklin has to come out for a part of the game or miss a couple of games due to injury. The quarterback room is going to be fine for the University of Utah. It just is. And there's no drop-off like there would be for BYU if Bear Bachmeier has to miss time. There's no drop-off. So running backs, much the same thing. Wayshawn Parker is a stud. He's going to be first-team All-Big 12 up there with LJ Martin. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be LJ Martin and it's going to be Wayshawn Parker to be the top 2 running backs in the conference. I don't think there are 2 better running backs in the entire conference or in the Western United States, honestly. The receiver room, again, for the University of Utah is going to be interesting to watch. They got a really good receiver from Utah State in Braden Pagan. He's going to be huge for Devin Dampier, much like Ryan Davis was last year. Braden Pagan is going to do the same for him. Ricky Johnson, transfer from Mississippi State. Watch for him. He could be the weapon that unlocks the deep game for the University of Utah. I really do think so. Then they've got Kyrie Scholes coming back for his senior year. He transferred in from San Jose State. And then Noah Benny in the tight end room along with Hunter Andrews. That's another one where you're going to have to keep an eye out. And especially with the new coach in the tight end room, it's not Freddie Whittingham anymore. If you look at the players in the NFL that the University of Utah has, there's like 4 tight ends, 4 or 5 in the NFL that went to Utah. So that's another sneaky thing to look at with that brain drain that followed Kyle Whittingham to Michigan is the tight end room. Hunter Andrews is a transfer in Noah Benny is a transfer in from Weber State. So FCS to FBS, we'll see how that goes. And the tight end is going to be an interesting one to watch. It really is. So the wide receiver room is going to be okay, I think. The tight end room, not so much. Then the offensive line, right? Obviously, I talked about that. 5 new starters across the board. All of them upperclassmen except for one, and that one was a top 100 recruit. So I'm not as worried as some people might be. I am still worried a little bit, but with it being a run-first offense, that lends itself to new linemen much better, and it's an easier ramp than it is for a pass-heavy offense or like an option offense or anything like that. So the offensive line should gel together after 6 or 7 games before the real tests start for Utah. and I think it will be okay. It's obviously not going to be the unit it was last year. It's impossible to do that when you got 3 guys in the NFL. So it's not going to be that unit, but it still is going to be really solid. The defensive line, however, yeah, that one worries me. Carson Kaufusi should be okay. Cash Dillon as well. I don't know if he's going to be able to replace John Henry Daly on his own, but he did have 3.5 sacks in limited time last year, so that is something to look out for. And Coach Ellis, by the way, is going to get the best out of this group. He just is. That's just the way it goes with Coach Ellis. He's going to get the most juice from the squeeze. So Lance Holtzclaw is also another one to look out for. He had 4 tackles for loss last season and could be a guy matched up with Cash Dillon that will be able to hopefully soften the blow of losing John Henry Daly, because we all saw it on the defense when John Henry Daly went down. It was a different defense. It just was. So, again, we'll have to see, but the defensive and offensive lines are the 2 worry units for me. Linebackers should be okay. Jonathan Hall is coming back to lead the unit. Trey Reynolds is a solid linebacker. You've got Elijah Ellis in there as well, and then Trey Reynolds. So this team on the linebacker core always puts out a very solid unit. Just look at the NFL again. Devin Lloyd, the Bartons. I mean, there's linebackers all over the NFL that went to Utah, so this one should be fine as well. Defensive back core is pretty much back, minus Smith. Smith Snowden is the big one missing. He went to Michigan as well, but the rest of them, Rabbit Evans, a healthy season from Rabbit Evans is going to be huge for the secondary. And then Elijah Davis, Rock Caldwell, James Cheneau, these guys are going to be good. They just are. Morgan Scalley's defensive back cores are always good. Always. So I'm not worried about the defensive back unit for the University of Utah either. And then they have probably the best special teams unit in the Big 12. Obviously, they've got Orion Phillips punting the ball. He's going to be very good, very solid. And Dylan Curtis into sophomore season. Maybe there will be a sophomore slump, but I don't think so, especially when you don't have Kyle Whittingham breathing down your neck. I think he'll feel a little bit more free as a kicker to do his job. So I think Dylan Curtis will have a better year this year as well. And so the entire special teams unit is basically back. It'll be fine. It'll be towards the top of the Big 12 again. No problems. So that's really how I feel about each position group going through it. Record prediction is where we're at this point. And just going through the schedule, it's wild how it's set up so beautifully for Utah. Like I said, if there were a year to have a massive coaching transition, this was it. So Idaho is a win. Arkansas at home is a win. Utah State at home, that's a win. Iowa State, either if it was at home or on the road, that's a win just because of talent alone. Utah is going to run all over Iowa State. Then you have a bye week, Kansas at home. That's a win. At Colorado, awkward rivalry game maybe, but I just don't see a world in which Utah loses this game. I don't. Houston at home, that's the big coin toss for me. I say it's 50-50. I think Utah is going to win it, especially because it's at home. It's homecoming. It has the opportunity to be like a big noon kickoff or a primetime game. So we'll have to keep an eye out on scheduling for that one because I expect both teams to be undefeated heading into this game. And so they both are going to be ranked. I don't know how highly, but they will both be ranked. And so that will be a big time game. And Utah usually does well in those. Sans Texas Tech last year, Utah usually performs well in these big games during the regular season. So I'm feeling like that's a win. At Cincinnati, that's a win. And then basically the season for Utah is the game at home against BYU. That's going to be interesting. This one will all come down to the health of the star players for both teams. How healthy is Bear Bachmeier for BYU? How healthy is LJ Martin? How healthy on the flip side is Devin Dampier? How healthy is Wayshawn Parker and Bert Ficklin? Braden Pagan? Those are the questions. And then, can BYU's defensive line do anything against this new revamped offensive line from the University of Utah? Who knows? Special teams, I give the edge to Utah. But offense should be offset. They're both going to be fantastic this year. Defense, I give the edge to Utah because I don't trust Kelly Papinga yet for BYU. And so with that in mind, this could be a loss for BYU. It's a coin flip. I don't really have a prediction on this. I will the week of the game, but right now it's a coin flip, so I don't know. So this could be Utah's first loss. Houston and BYU are the two big ones. Then they travel to Arizona in the week after the Holy War, which has been a bugaboo for both teams. So this could be an upset loss for the University of Utah against Noah Fafita if he's healthy. I don't think so, though. I think Utah, especially if they beat BYU, are definitely going to roll the rest of their schedule. And then at TCU could be a tricky one as well. But again, with the sheer talent Utah has on the offensive side of the ball, I don't see TCU keeping up. And then at home against West Virginia, that should be a win as well. West Virginia will be better than they were last year. Coach Rich Rod will have more of his kind of guys on his team to be able to run his offense. But what made his offense so dynamic and lethal his first trip at West Virginia was because nobody else was doing it, and he was able to turn athletes into quarterbacks. And so that's kind of just how college football is now. It's a hybrid of the Chip Kelly, Rich Rodriguez, Urban Meyer offenses now. And so everybody's used to seeing it. And that's why Rich Rod, he's still a good coach, but he's not dynamic anymore. And so that's why I'm not really worried about anything West Virginia has to offer, especially at the end of the year. It's Black Friday. Rice Eccles is going to be jumping like it always is. So I can, conservatively, Utah is going to go 10-2 again. That's conservative. That's their floor. Their ceiling is undefeated. Utah could go 12-0 and find themselves in the Big 12 championship. Depending on the health of both teams going into the Holy War, that is basically going to be the deciding factor, is just health at that point in the season. And I can foresee BYU getting really knocked around and beat up a little bit with their schedule coming into that game as opposed to what Utah has on offer. So it could be an undefeated season. For my record prediction, though, I'm going to go 11-1. Utah losing to BYU at home again. And then because of that, missing out on the Big 12 championship unless Texas Tech slides and they lose a game or two. Then it could be a Holy War in the Big 12 championship. How awesome would that be? That would be epic. Just absolutely epic. I would love that. So that's my record prediction for the Utes. 10-2 floor, undefeated season. I think they're going to go 11-1 with their one loss to BYU and another special season. Potentially college football playoff bound as well. The thing that would hold them back is their schedule. Who did they beat? They beat a ranked Houston team, a potentially ranked Arizona team, maybe a number 25 TCU, but at that point in the season, I don't think TCU will be ranked. And then the worst team in the SEC, middle of the pack, Pac-12 team. I don't know. That's where it'll get tricky because it's ESPN, right? And so ESPN and all that money they spent on the SEC, they're going to want to take an 8-4 SEC team over an 11-1 Big 12 team every time. Every time. So that will be a conversation for late December. So, yeah. I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to the whole college football playoff and the mess they created for themselves and inflicted on themselves. But that's another episode. So that's my record prediction. I think Utah has a chance to have another very special season. It could be what the parlance of the dead cat bounce, where, yes, this still is mostly Kyle Whittingham's team. It is. And there's a lot of talent on here, but they are seniors and draft-eligible juniors. Devin Dampier is a senior. Wayshawn Parker, draft-eligible junior. I think he's going to go pro after this year. Braden Pagan, senior. And then you go on the defensive side of the ball. Rabbit Evans is a senior. Jackson Benny is a draft-eligible junior. Jonathan Hall is a senior. So there's a lot there that is still Kyle Whittingham's guys, and I could liken it to that 2001 season that BYU had, where it was still Lavelle Edwards' talent, but Gary Croton was able to come in and basically not screw it up, put his own zhuzh on the offense, and BYU had a very successful season. I can see the same sort of thing happening here. The real test is going to be next season for Utah, how Morgan Scalley does on the recruiting trail, how he's able to retain any sort of talent that he can. He did an admirable job this year, retaining everyone that he did. So That's really what I'm looking for, is his momentum going into the offseason after this coming season, and what he can do in molding this program into what he wants it to be. Kerry Croton, and this is a very apt comparison. I'm sorry, Utah fans, but it is. Because LaVell Edwards was a legend. Kyle Whittingham was a legend. And so you get this first year post-legend. There's still a ton of talent across the board. The schedule lines up very nicely and very favorably for you. So you're going to have a huge year. And so a lot of people's expectations next season are going to be sky high, and rightfully so. But who knows what's going to happen? Now, the part where their paths diverge is Gary Croton was not a LaVell Edwards disciple. He was not on the coaching staff. There was a big row about Norm Chow not getting the head coaching position after being a long-time assistant to LaVell Edwards. That didn't happen at Utah. Morgan Scalley is a disciple of Kyle Whittingham. He's been in the program basically his entire adult life. So he lives and breathes and bleeds Utah red. So that's the difference, and maybe that will be enough, but that's a different conversation for a different episode. My prediction for Utah, 11-1. One loss to BYU, and they get left out of the Big 12 championship game, and then they become the BYU of this season, where the last 2 years BYU got left out. This year, it might be Utah. We'll see what happens. But that's what I have for you. 3 players to watch on both sides of the ball. Let's get to that point. This one's a little bit easier for me than BYU was. It is Bird Ficklin. How much are they going to integrate him into the regular offense instead of just gadget or trick plays? That'll be interesting to watch. Braden Pagan, how does he integrate himself with Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin and become a trusted weapon on the offensive side of the ball? And then, how does the freshman do? Does Kelvin Obit live up to the hype? Is he a top 100 offensive lineman, recruit, 5-star? Can he live up to that hype? Will they trust him out on the edge, or will they start him inside? Those are the 3 on offense I want you to look out for. The 3 on defense, Carson Kafusi. Will he live up to the defensive tackle legacy that the University of Utah has with Starlo Tulele and all of those guys? Jonathan Hall, can he fill in and become the next linebacker like Devin Lloyd, the Bartons? Can he do it? And Rabbit Evans. Can Rabbit Evans stay healthy for the entire season? If he can, he has the potential to be all Big 12, fringe All-American. He has that kind of talent. Can he stay healthy? So there you go. Those are the 6 players to look out for that aren't the superstars. Notice I didn't say Devin Dampier or Wayshawn Parker. I also didn't say Elijah Davis or Jackson Benny. So those are guys I'm just expecting to have huge years. And then how does Morgan Scalley do in crunch time in those games? Not even just the big ones, but in those games where those major decisions need to be made. Coach's challenge, timeouts, clock management. Kalani Sitake has failed a lot in that clock management, timeouts, all of that stuff. He's failed really hard. But he was still been able to have double-digit win seasons. Can Morgan Scalley do a better job? Because Kyle Whittingham had his little guffaws in that area as well, especially over the last few seasons. So there's just some things to look out for, but I still expect Utah, the talent on this roster, to overcome any sort of shortcomings or transfers and defections in the coaching staff to go 11-1. So that is it, everybody. Next week, look forward to the Utah State preview. Hint, not going to be a good year for the Aggies. Sorry, it just isn't going to be. But that's what I have for you all this week. Thank you all so much for being here. And I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.